The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Can't speak for broke, but they are back. Yes, Lord Football returns, and it takes over the sporting landscape from now until really like next June. Yeah, I mean, that's the way they do it. It's not just the football season, which doesn't wrap up now until mid-February with the Super Bowl. You then have the combine, you have the draft, you have the mini camps, and then they take a little time off in the summer, and then they're right back. So here it is, the 24th of July, and they're off and running. And Dan Quinn and Adam Peters had an opening news conference yesterday. I'll talk in a moment about the significance of that. But the players are on the field right now. 9 o'clock was the start time for practice in Ashburn, and be following along on Twitter for any updates. There is a late update, though, and this is very good news, I think. Johnny Newton, who was a great player at Illinois, a tackle, and slipped to the second round because of a foot injury, and has been rehabbing, hasn't been participating in the offseason workouts or minicamp, and has been on the physically unable to perform list, has now been taken off of that. So he's cleared to practice. Not that they necessarily need great help on the defensive line, but that's the way you draft. You layer it in. You get players who can come up and eventually take over for the high-priced veterans. You know, I think this is the last year of Jonathan Allen's contract. I know he'd like to stay here, and maybe they give him an extension. But if not, you want to have players behind him who are ready to play. That was one of the real problems of this organization for many years is they go, oh, well, we got enough defensive backs. They never took offensive linemen because it wasn't sexy enough. And that's why you wind up with a bad roster. So very, I think, encouraging news that Johnny Newton, the second-round pick from Illinois, has been cleared to practice. And we'll get to some of the comments that were made yesterday by Dan Quinn and Adam Peters. But I think it's significant, and I felt this watching it on Zoom yesterday, that they had a joint news conference. I cannot remember, even back to the glory days, although media was a little bit different then, but back when they had a real organization with two Hall of Famers running it, Joe Gibbs and Bobby Beathard. I don't think they had a joint news conference. And then over the years of Snyder, you had a general manager sort of in Vinny Serrato, but nobody wanted to hear from him. And when they did, he was a dope. He said ridiculous things. And, he was basically Dan Snyder's lackey. So there wasn't any significance when he spoke. And then we had, a couple of years, Scott McCloughan, but I don't remember him appearing with Jay Gruden. And McCloughan was hired after Jay Gruden. The fact that they now run like a real organization is very encouraging. They did it the right way. They hired the general manager first, Adam Peters. Adam Peters then hired the coach, Dan Quinn. Peters is going to run the football operation in terms of talent acquisition, not just through the draft, but this becomes very important as the season goes on. They pick up the street free agents. Those are big. That's huge. And Scott McCloughan did a really good job with this in 2015 when they got to the playoffs. And that's what you have to do as players go down. You look around the league and you see who's available, and you bring them in, you plug them in, and hope that they fill the position well enough so you continue to win. So he's going to concentrate just on that and building the team not just for this year, but for years to come. Dan Quinn, who has taken a team to a Super Bowl and has done a good job as defensive coordinator in places like Seattle and Dallas, though his last game against Green Bay left a lot to be desired. But he has experience as a head coach. He's got chops, and I thought it was very impressive watching them yesterday sit side by side, working together, and this could be the start of a beautiful relationship. We'll see. Good stuff, and all positives. This was Quinn's opening remark yesterday.
Sometimes at the beginning of training camp, I like to think to the end of it and then try to work backwards. How do we get things done that we want to get done? You create a map to go back from there. So there are so many things that I'm looking forward to, but to sum it up, this camp will be challenging, it'll be demanding, and it's also going to be fun as hell. And this is where we start, writing the chapter of what this 2024 Commanders team will be about. So having fun and working really hard, those two things should be synonymous. And so being here alongside with AP, hell yeah, let's get it rolling.
Hell yeah. And of course, it's going to be rah-rah at the beginning. I think it was probably rah-rah with Ron Rivera. And look, even last year, there was some element of rah-rah because of the way Eric Bieniemy presented himself in his opening news conference. There was a lot of enthusiasm for him, and people came away saying, Jesus, why is he not a head coach? Sounds like a head coach. Worked with Andy Reid all these years. Why hasn't anybody given him an opportunity? Well, maybe we saw that last year. Who knows with this organization whether he really got a great opportunity to present himself. But he doesn't have a job in the NFL right now. He's working in college as the offensive coordinator at UCLA. And it was seen as this was going to be a springboard for him to become a head coach in the league, possibly even here if they decided not to renew Ron Rivera. And that didn't work out. So now you have the enthusiasm with Dan Quinn, experienced coach and an experienced offensive coordinator, and off we go. The big story, of course, is going to be the quarterback. And so far, and I've noted this a number of times, and I just wonder about the ego of Caleb Williams, where the Bears found it necessary to name him the starting quarterback on the first day of rookie minicamp or rookie OTAs, I guess it was. And I thought, I know that he's going to be the starting quarterback, but why was it necessary to do that? They did this with RG3, and the reason was he was very insecure about Kirk Cousins. So that was Mike Shanahan wanting to calm him down a little bit and say, don't worry, you're going to be the starting quarterback. And he was, and it was a great year. It all worked out, and it may work out that way for Caleb Williams. It's not going that way so far for Jaden Daniels. Doesn't mean that Jaden Daniels hasn't been impressive so far. It's just that this is the way Quinn has decided to handle it. And so far, here we are, starting of training camp. And training camp is a lot different than it used to be. Used to be 2-a-days. Many, many opportunities for quarterbacks to get reps. You don't have that as much. There aren't that many practices. So once you name a starting quarterback, you're going to want him to have as many reps as he can possibly get. And the way it works is the backups get few reps. But so far, and this could change by the end of the week, so far, Dan Quinn is saying that it's a quarterback battle between Marcus Mariota and the rookie Jaden Daniels.
It's not a secret, but it is a journey and a process. And so as we're going, when he's ready, we'll know. And when he's ready, he'll also know. But as far as the reps go, obviously with him and Marcus and moving around, there'll be certain days that will feature more of another. But like I said, I'm glad that you brought it up, and certainly not a secret. It's a journey and a process. And so through practices, through scrimmages and preseason games, all the way down, that's where the journey will take us. And then I'm not trying to hold back the info, but when we know, we'll say it.
Okay, so they're going to let everybody know. I imagine it's going to be before the first preseason game. I would think, because you only have 2. There's 3 preseason games. Nobody plays in the third one. So I would think that they would have their starting quarterback going into the Jets game, which is August the 10th, and then they can go from there with Jaden Daniels. But this is more from Quinn on why he has not named Daniels the starter so far, and he says it's not a motivational tactic.
Certainly not motivated. This is a extremely motivated player. At every position, this is the case, and we've got great confidence, all of that. But like I said earlier, it's not one size that fits all. So as we're going through this whole process, let's make sure if we are going to be about the competition and how things are going to go, we're not going to miss one step of their development, and that's what this time of year is for. So we want to make sure we're able to use all of that time.
Yeah, so he wants all of training camp to figure this out. I don't think it's going to take that long. I think they know that it's going to be Daniels. They just want to get the full squad out on the field. I guess they'll have a padded practice over the next week or so. You're not allowed to have that many these days, so that will be a factor in this. One other story that's been percolating in the offseason is this Brandon Ayuk. I don't know what you want to call it. He's got his nose, I guess, pressed up against the window here, that he wants to play with Jaden Daniels, who was his quarterback when Daniels was a freshman at Arizona State. There's also the contract issue. It's important, I think, to note that Ayuk is showing up for the 49ers. He's not holding out. And belief throughout the league is no matter how much huffing and puffing he's doing, he's going to wind up signing an extension with the 49ers. He's their guy. There's no question they want him long term, and they certainly want him this year because they're going to make another run at the Super Bowl. As a matter of fact, let me throw this in too. This was a cool story from the last couple of days. Kyle Shanahan tried to get Bill Belichick on his staff. Yeah, he explained it the other day with Tim Kawakami, who does a show in San Francisco, and he said that once he found out that Belichick was not going to get a head coaching job, he reached out to him and said, "Hey, you want to come here? You can do anything you want." He says, "I'll give you carte blanche. You walk in here, and I guess short of being the head coach of the team, you can get involved in anything you want to do." And he really wasn't insulted by that. He could have said, "Hey, kid, I was a head coach in this league when you were in diapers," but he didn't do that. He politely turned it down, according to Shanahan, and says Shanahan thinks that he'll be back in the NFL as a head coach before long. But back to the Ayuk situation. There was something posted on Ayuk's Instagram about a Washington practice, and that created a stir. And it created a stir partly because there's nothing else going on. When the NFL is not operational, any morsel that leaks out about the NFL, people jump all over it. So that was part of it. But that led to this question yesterday to Adam Peters from JP Finley.
A lot of crazy stuff happens during the NFL break, social media, all kinds of weird stuff. But you guys actually had another player post practice footage. What was the reaction in the building? How do you handle that?
I'll take it. I think first and foremost, he didn't have practice footage, so
still maybe.
Yeah, still, yeah. So, but we handled it internally, and we're unconcerned with that.
Nikki Jhabvala of the Post is reporting that they spoke to Daniels about it, no fine, and I don't know if he had anything to do with it. He was kind of hanging out with Ayuk during the offseason, which is fine. They were friends, and Ayuk did a podcast on ESPN with Ryan Clark, and Daniels was with him. Any look like that leads to crazy speculation. But fact is, the 49ers are not going to trade him. And even if they were, given what Washington would have to give up and the way they're building the team with draft picks, I just don't see it happening. They want to win games, but I think they recognize that in an all-out move, the old administration, Ayuk would already be here. He would have arrived on a magic carpet, and they would have thrown a parade for him. And you read various things on social media and through these websites where people are saying, "Oh boy, get Ayuk. This could be one dangerous offense." Well, pump your brakes. We don't know about the offensive line yet. Cliff Kingsbury is installing a new system. It's a rookie quarterback, and as good as he may become, he's going to have some hiccups along the way. So I wouldn't do the deal, and that was Peter's basic. And he really can't comment anyway because Ayuk is under contract, so there's really not much he can say about it. But what Nikki Jhabvala is reporting here is they probably took Jaden Daniels aside and said, "Look, I know that you don't have any responsibility for that, but he's your friend, and this is creating unnecessary distractions for us and, by extension, for you. So if you don't mind, just tell him to back off." And it looks like he has. The fact that Ayuk is showing up for the 49ers, not holding out, tells you a lot. And it probably tells you that they've made assurances to his agent that they'll get this done. And they have a history of this. They make deals late in camp. They've done this a number of times. And I would not be surprised if we find out right before the season opener, which is not until September, that Ayuk has reached a deal, long-term deal, to stay in San Francisco. The other big news breaking from yesterday was a story in the Washington Post by Mark Maskey that the league and the Players Association are now actively talking about an 18-game schedule, keeping in mind that the collective bargaining agreement doesn't expire until 2030. So it's possible before the agreement it comes to an end, and I think there is an opener in there for 18 games that they could discuss it. Things are moving along, and it sounds like it's moving along in the direction of it's 18 games sooner rather than later. Maybe not next season, maybe not the season after that, but soon. And Tony Kornheiser and Mike Wilbon took a look at this yesterday on PTI.
NFLPA Executive Director Lloyd Howell is not dead set against it. Howell said, quote, "I call it bargaining," unquote, and referred to money, field surfaces, time off, OTAs, and safety as possible chips for the NFLPA. Wilbur, could you see the players supporting an 18-game schedule?
Yeah, they're going to support an 18-game schedule. And Tony, let me declare my baggage, all right? This is sort of new baggage.
Yeah, he's your boy.
Friendship is not new. Lloyd Howell is a personal friend and has been that for a long time. So let me get that out of the way. And I believe in his expertise and his intellect and his ability to persuade and guide and negotiate. I do. And this is a negotiation. That's what it sounded like to me. I hate the notion of an 18-game schedule because I think the league just lies. It doesn't even pay lip service. It lies. It talks about, health and safety being a primary issue, and it isn't. Money's the primary issue. It's the only issue. They don't give a damn. So that's my thing. And the league, the players have to know that. And they're going to get their money. Let me just give a quick suggestion. Why not make it so that you can play 18 games, but players cannot be eligible for more than 16? So that means nobody can play more than 16, but there is an 18-game schedule with NFL players, and your roster can expand. You can have more guys. They just won't be eligible to be maimed, which the NFL as a league entity doesn't care about.
That has been talked about at great length. Look, 18 is coming. 17 is idiotic. You can't end your season 9-8. It's incomplete. It's idiotic. Everybody knows they crossed the Rubicon, players and owners, when they went to 17. There's a big opportunity for players. They are going to support 18 because they're going to get a lot of what they want. Not going to get everything, but they're going to get money. They're going to get time off with extra bye weeks. They might be able to get all grass fields for safety issues. They might be able to reduce OTAs, which are stupid and nobody wants them anyway. They're going to cash in on this particular thing. The owners are going to get 18. The players are going to get a bunch of stuff. The season, thank God, is going to go all the way into March probably. And that's, as they say, how we make the peace.
Not exactly March. What they're pointing towards, and this makes total sense, they'll play it on President's Day weekend. There will be 2 byes, and they had 2 byes in the 93 season. That's when they started on Labor Day weekend. They don't start that early anymore because the television ratings aren't as good as they used to be, but maybe they'll back it up again, but that would be the day to do it, and then everybody would be off Monday. And as I said yesterday, that means kickoff coming later. We have a 6:20 kickoff, I believe, for the Super Bowl now. Count on it like 8:20. Means the game won't be over till midnight, but the NFL will say, so what? You're off tomorrow. Not everybody is off. It's a federal holiday, but not for everybody in the private sector, but okay. It'll become a national holiday. That's how big the Super Bowl is. And, as far as where the schedule is now, if you're going to have a season that ends in the 3rd week of February, are you really going to ask the players to come back in early April for OTAs? And, most guys, they stay in shape all year now. We used to have an off season that was really important to the players because that's how they'd make money. You weren't making enough to live on as a player, and guys had off-season jobs. The reason that Tom Landry wore a suit and a tie on the sidelines is because that's what he wore when he went to work, both as the head coach of the Cowboys and in the off-season selling insurance or whatever else he did. He had some other job. Most guys did. There were very few who made enough money. Almost nobody made enough money to support themselves. Some had endorsements like Frank Gifford and others, but by and large, guys needed to supplement their income, and you needed the offseason. Well, that's not the case anymore. They get paid plenty of money. They get paid to be in shape 12 months a year. And these OTAs, which are voluntary in air quotes, it's a bunch of nonsense. It really is. So have a collective bargaining agreement. Make it certain when players are supposed to be there and when they don't have to be there, and move forward. Let's stop with this quote-unquote voluntary stuff, because it ain't voluntary. It's, if you don't go, it's like, oh, what do you mean? And that really is not conducive to what they're trying to do here. So I would expect that this 18-game schedule will be in place. The season will end with the Super Bowl in February, late February now, with the President's Day weekend, and that we probably won't have players due back until July. They could even do away with the mandatory minicamp. The only advantage of the minicamp, as I see it, maybe they would still have it for this, is that it comes a couple of weeks after the draft. So you get your first kind of look at the draft picks, how they fit in with your veterans, just sort of an offseason checkup. Maybe they could still have that. And then nobody's due back until whatever it is, mid-July, even early July, and they're off and rolling with the season. And speaking of training camp, by the way, it used to be like 6 to 8 weeks. It's 4 weeks now, and when it was 6 to 8 weeks, they were putting the players in college dorms. When they were in Carlisle all those years, Dickinson College, you had 280-pound linemen sleeping in beds that were built for like 17 and 18-year-old girls. And so that's why they're so happy to get out of there. You know where they're staying this year? Lansdowne Luxury Resort. Beautiful. I've been there. Nice place. Things have changed, and things are going to change in the NFL. We're going to have an 18-game schedule. Book it. Coming up, Chase Daniel with a couple of thoughts on the Dan Patrick Show. Chase Daniel, longtime backup in the NFL, now does a podcast and has some thoughts on something we talked about the other day, this odd statement by John Harbaugh that he believes Lamar Jackson will become the best player in the history of the NFL. Laying that on him, and Daniel has some analysis of that as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
I got Tony coming up at 11 today. Also, Orioles preview. We do that every Wednesday, and we're due to be joined by Albert Suarez, who took a ball off his shin last night. Fortunately, x-rays were negative, but he was in quite a bit of pain after the game. So hope he posts today. I'm sure he will, as the Orioles continue their series with Miami. They wrap it up with a noon game tomorrow. So, before we get to the comments from Chase Daniel, I should mention we had some breaking news today that Salt Lake City is getting the 2034 Winter Olympics. And here's the key sentence in the story. Salt Lake City was the lone contender the Olympic Committee was considering for 2034. So it wasn't exactly a bidding war that they won. And we talked about this, I guess it was Monday, about the long story in the Post over the weekend about the 1984 Olympics and how Peter Ueberroth made them profitable. It had been a money loser. They were teetering. There were a lot of issues. We had boycotted in 1980. The Soviets boycotted in 1984. But it turned out to be an incredible Olympics with a lot of great feeling. Well, we didn't have as much competition, so we were cleaning up with medals. But, big-time stars were born there, like Carl Lewis and Mary Lou Retton and others. And it was a really, Edwin Moses, it was a real happening. And part of the reason that they were financially successful was they didn't have to build a venue. They had the Coliseum, which was built for the 1932 Olympics. And while that's a long, long time ago, in 1984, that was, it was a while. It was 52 years, but it was still very much operational as it is today. They held Super Bowls there, USC plays there, all those things. So it was the place that they could save a lot of money. The main stadium was already there. And that's really the case for Salt Lake City is a number of things that they built in 2002 are not just there, but they've been maintained well. So by the time they get to 2034, you're talking about 32-year-old venues that have been maintained, and they don't have to spend a lot of money building it. Also, all the venues are just a 1-hour drive from the University of Utah campus, which is where the athletes would stay. So they save a lot of money on construction. They make it work. But, man, by and large, Olympics have been absolute money drains over the years. And, in some ways we can look at the Nationals and thank the Olympics for, in a long, convoluted way, making that happen. When they had the Olympics in Montreal in 1976, they built Olympic Stadium, which is where the Expos played. And it had a retractable roof, but it would take like 45 minutes to put it in place. I mean, it was just not a good stadium. It was a terrible stadium, and the city was not going to build them a new one. So that's how they wound up in Washington. So that's the story of the Olympics. And if you can make it work financially, then go ahead. But here you go. Here's one city bidding on the Olympics. Chase Daniel, longtime backup in the NFL. He was a really good quarterback at Missouri. He was an undrafted free agent by Washington, I want to say like 2006, maybe 2005. And he had an amazing career. He hung around for like 15 years and made like 4 or 5 starts his whole career. They obviously liked having him in the quarterback room. For a guy who's not very tall, he's maybe 5'10", and without, I guess, a lot of talent, he wound up making a lot of money not playing football on a bunch of teams. But he learned a lot, and he worked with some really great quarterbacks over the years. And so he's become quite good as a podcaster and appears on the Dan Patrick Show from time to time, and looking as training camps open about the possibility of three-peat for the Kansas City Chiefs.
The only person and people that can beat the Kansas City Chiefs are themselves. And they almost did it last year with all those drops. You saw Patrick Mahomes on multiple occasions last year with those receivers getting so frustrated. What do? They go out and they draft Xavier Worthy, which I think is one of the better receivers in this class. If you're going to go and do the speed type thing, you're going to run by guys. That's what Andy Reid wants to do. You go out and you get Hollywood Brown.
But if you're Buffalo, though, Chase, and Kansas City says, we'd like to trade up to your position.
Yeah, I don't do it. You don't do it. And then you lose Stephon Diggs. You're just letting the best team in the NFL get better. So I don't understand that. And the biggest thing about KC is, I mean, everyone saw that clip, that throw from Patrick Mahomes to Xavier Worthy a few days ago in training camp. And in my mind, I'm like, don't get excited about a throw in training camp. Don't get excited about a throw in training camp. I was beyond myself because it's just like the throw, the catch, like you can just see the weapons they're going to have. The biggest question mark is that offensive line. How are they going to hold up? But their defense, Dan, their defense carried them. And you can see the growth in Patrick Mahomes this past year. His numbers were the worst of any year as a starter that he's been at. But he still won a Super Bowl because he was able to digest the information and to change. He didn't have to throw it deep all the way. So when the best player in the NFL gets better, protections, throwing, leadership, that's a scary thought for the rest of the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, all those things come into play, how good they are. But at some point, success, and this is something that you've heard Nick Saban say a lot of times, the biggest enemy of success is success. It's hard to maintain that edge. And while Pat Riley patented or trademarked three-peat, he never did it. It's hard to do. It's really hard to do. You got to have somebody like Michael Jordan to three-peat, which he did twice. NFL, NBA, maybe a little different. But if the Kansas City Chiefs do three-peat, then you got to make the case, even with the 6 titles that Tom Brady won in New England, that as a team, because this is pretty much the same team that's stayed together, you might say if they three-peat, they're the best team of all time. And we've had some great dynasty teams, the 49ers, the Steelers, even the Redskins with 3 championships over 9 years, 4 Super Bowl appearances. But to do it 3 straight years, that's why I've always admired the Buffalo Bills, because I think that's the hardest thing to do is the incredible disappointment of losing a Super Bowl and to get back up on your feet and come back not just 1 year, not just 2 years, but 3 years. They lost all 4. But I once had the opportunity to meet Marv Levy, and I told him that. I said, what you did I think is one of the greatest accomplishments in sports, that you were able to rebound like you were. And he thanked me. He was a very nice guy. I think he's still alive. He's like in his late 90s, something like that. So, yeah, we'll see what happens with the Chiefs. Meantime, this was kind of a shocker the other day. This was Sunday when the Ravens were practicing, and Lamar Jackson had been sent home. He was ill. And so they were asking John Harbaugh at the end. This wasn't the first question of the news conference. It was at the end about the criticism that Lamar is getting. And probably the main reason is he's played in 6 playoff games. He's lost 4 of them, including the AFC Championship game at home this past year where he didn't play all that well. And Harbaugh, in his defense of Lamar, I think may have taken it a little bit too far. In case you missed this was Sunday from John Harbaugh.
The old saying, you guys played sports, they used to tell you don't read your press clippings, right? We don't really have press clippings anymore. We got the phones and the computers. Press clipping, at least if it was bad, you could throw it up and throw it in the trash can. Now I want to. So I do flip through them, to be honest with you. I read the stuff. I see the guys say what they say on the shows. At least I get clips of them because they come up on your phone. And the good ones I just scroll past because, that's candy, that's not real. But the bad ones, it's like you roll. I read it right away, and don't let it go. And that's okay. That's part of the deal. And Lamar, for whatever reason, there's a lot of great things said about Lamar, but there's a lot of stuff that's said that you got to just scratch your head about and kind of wonder, what's that person even thinking, So, but we take it personally. Lamar's a guy all his life. Lamar Jackson has been a guy who's been answering those same questions. I'm talking about since he was a kid, junior high, high school, college, the draft, the success he's had in the National Football League, and it still comes up. Okay? He's still growing. He's got a growth mindset. He's going to get better and better, no doubt. But what does he have to do to prove himself to some people, right? And so the thing for me is it's talking about vision again. There's a vision. And I believe the Ravens and we've always had a vision for Lamar Jackson. It started with Lamar's vision and his mom's vision when he said he was going to be a quarterback. He was going to be a quarterback in high school. He was going to be a quarterback in college. He was going to be a quarterback in the National Football League. And we bought into that. We embraced it. We built an offense for it in 19. We're building another offense for it in 23 and 24 going forward, right? The next iteration of our offense around Lamar Jackson. Because in my opinion, the vision for Lamar Jackson, and it's a vision, it's something you see it like it's already happened. You can see it like it's already been done. The victory has already been won when you pour into a vision. And the vision that we have together is that Lamar Jackson is going to become and be known and be recognized as the greatest quarterback ever to play in the history of the National Football League. That's the vision, all right? It's going to happen by Lamar, his work ethic, and his brilliant talent, by all of us pouring into that effort together as a team, teamwork, and by the grace of God and God's goodwill. That's how it's going to happen. And I believe it like we've already seen it.
Greatest quarterback in the history of the National Football League. He's only 27. He's a two-time MVP. He may have another 10, 12 years where he's still great. But, we judge things by winning. And at the moment, he's not even the best quarterback in the history of Baltimore. There's a guy named Unitas who's got a couple of championships and is in the Hall of Fame. Not that Lamar won't get to the Hall of Fame, but that's a lot to lay on a guy right now. And you wonder about the motivation for that. So here's Daniel with his analysis of what you just heard Harbaugh say.
It makes no sense. And it sounds like he does need a cheerleader. I mean, he's missed back-to-back days being sick. So maybe Harbaugh's like, hey, come back. We need you. I'm not sure that whole situation. And I get a head coach hyping up a quarterback, but to say it in the way he said it, that's our vision for Lamar, is for him to be the greatest quarterback of all time in the National Football League. I just sort of lost, not respect for Harbaugh, but he's pretty truthful. But when he said that, I'm like, dude, you've got 2 MVPs. Yeah, but you don't have a Super Bowl. And until you get 1 or 2 Super Bowls, you can't even put them in that conversation, because you go out, you win the MVP last year, which, it was up for debate. I thought it should have been Dak or Brock Purdy. I thought Lamar played well enough. But you go and you lose at home to the best team in the National Football League. Like, you got to beat the Chiefs. You got to get past the Chiefs. You got to get over that hump. And quite honestly, that's going to be the story from a national media perspective. At least that's how I follow it, is until you can win the big game, you can get the 1 seed, you can do everything you want, but it really matters in the playoffs. And you look at Lamar's playoff record, it's not great.
Yeah, it just kind of put a spotlight, a brighter spotlight on what he hasn't done instead of what it's been a pretty remarkable career. That B27, you got 2 MVPs, but there's nobody in the history of the sport that's had 2 MVPs and didn't win a Super Bowl.
Exactly.
And I think look, that plays well in Baltimore. I'm sure that the Raven fans were like, yeah. But, the thing is it went out to the national media as well, and that's when we're going, I don't get it. But I think you just added some more pressure on Lamar, because he's one of those guys, and there's certain guys, like the Cowboys, where you go, I don't care what you do during the regular season. I want to see what you do in the postseason.
Do you think it's a motivation tactic, reverse psychology, to get Lamar to buy in, to think he's gonna that's the only way I can think about it. Because if you really think about it, like, he's wrong saying that, but maybe it's a motivation tactic. Like,
Chase,
Lamar,
he's got 2 MVPs. He can't be that insecure. He's got 2 MVPs.
You would be surprised, Dan, with these insecurities of these starting quarterbacks.
And that's sometimes motivation. I mean, Tom Brady acted like he was playing for his job all the time, and it worked. So, yeah, it is curious what John Harbaugh said, and he's been around a long time. It's like 16th, 17th year in Baltimore. So kind of surprising, but that was the analysis from Chase Daniel yesterday on the Dan Patrick Show. Coming up in the next hour, Orioles preview. We're due to be joined by Albert Suarez. Also, Brian Windhorst with thoughts on the early struggles of the U.S. Olympic basketball team. Should we be concerned or not? Stay with us. It's the Andy Poland Show, ESPN 630. All right, we're going to roll into Orioles preview at 10:30. Kind of a tough night for the Birds last night. Had a couple of injuries. One of them to Albert Suarez, who took a ball off his shin. Fortunately, X-rays negative, but he's due to join us to talk about last night and where the team is now. They're struggling a little bit. There's no question about that. And then they have the trade deadline coming up next week, so I would imagine that they'll add some starting pitching and so forth and so on. But, yeah, there's some issues there, and we'll talk to him about that. Also, some thoughts from Brandon Hyde on the loss last night and where they stand. Before we roll into some of the stuff from Ashburn, and they are practicing today, the big news before practice started today, and they got going at 9 o'clock in Ashburn, and this was kind of a surprise because all the reporters who were out during the OTAs and the minicamp saw Johnny Newton, who was their second-round pick, tackle out of Illinois, slip probably to the second round because he'd had a foot injury. He was like riding a stationary bike with a boot on his foot. And just yesterday, when they had an opening news conference, Dan Quinn indicated that they were going to take it slow with him. They were going to take their time and make sure he was ready to go. But he did say sooner rather than later. Well, sooner arrived rather than later because he's on the field today, cleared to go. He said he worked really hard to get back to rehab. He'd had to have a second surgery on the other foot. I mean, I guess maybe it's a congenital thing. I don't know what it is, but yeah, that's a good sign that their second-round pick is ready to go and on the field. Of course, all the attention is on Jaden Daniels, and so far they have not named him the starting quarterback. Excuse me. Before we get to thoughts from Quinn, and also I want to play something that Brian Windhorst said yesterday on PTI about the performance so far of the U.S. Olympic basketball team. I have a fish story to tell you, and it's a story from New Jersey, and it's a couple that owns a Tesla, and they had it parked in their driveway, Cynthia and Jeff Levine. And they live in the Atlantic Highlands area, if you're familiar with that. It's about a mile from the Raritan Bay, if you know your New Jersey geography. And they hear this loud sound, and the Tesla in the parking lot, all the horns are going off. It's going crazy. And they go out and, what the hell's going on there? They see that a fish has crashed into and cracked their windshield. How does that happen? Well, they actually have some surveillance video on top of their garage. I guess it's for security purposes. And there's a still photo where you can see the fish dropping onto the car. And it appears that, because they found an eagle's nest about a mile away, that the eagle had caught the fish, was taking it to the nest, I guess, for dinner, and accidentally dropped the fish on the Tesla. And, the guy runs out of his house. Is somebody after us? Wow, what happened here? And then they put two and two together. Oh, yeah, there's an eagle's nest out there. And I guess the eagle somehow dropped the fish on the car. Local officials say it's common to see birds flying around with fish in their mouth. I guess they got a better grip, most of them, and they hang on to the fish. The guy, Jeff, said he lowered his deductible, so he said, if any birds are listening, please don't drop it here because I'm covered now. They said a similar incident happened in Sayreville last year when a raptor dropped a fish on a transformer and knocked out power to thousands. So this wasn't as bad, I guess, as it could have been. But, yeah, I mean, you think of all the things that could happen and all the ways that your car could be damaged, including by, some vandal who comes in and tries to break in. Damn, if a fish doesn't fall on your car and smash the windshield. And they said there were scales and blood everywhere. I mean, just terrible. And, boy, you wouldn't think that that would happen, but it did. And I guess it must have been an interesting call to the insurance company. It's a shame
It's, of course, a shame anyway. He was 94, but this would be a perfect Bob Newhart skit. The way he used to do those fake telephone calls, calling in to his insurance company. Yes, the car was damaged. Yes, a fish hit it. What? Yeah, a fish fell out of the sky and hit the car. Really? Who wouldn't want to be the adjuster on the other end of the claim? Your car was damaged by a bass, and the headline in the New York Post is just great. That's a pain in the bass. So that's great. All right. This was more of from yesterday. Dan Quinn and Adam Peters holding their joint news conference. They both have made a point to address reporters by name. There's a whole new atmosphere going on out there. Not that Ron Rivera wasn't good with the media, and he was, and as time went on, he got to know the reporters and would address them by name and so forth. But these guys have gone out of their way for that. There was also a media gathering the other night where it was just kind of a get-together, get-to-know the people. Adam Peters was there. Dan Quinn was there. Or anything that was said was off the record. It was real, things that just didn't happen here under the Dan Snyder administration. So you'll hear Dan Quinn address the reporter. Her name is Candy Waller. She works for Bowie TV and seems to be at a lot of the news conferences. She asks very good questions. And towards the end of the news conference yesterday, she asked Dan Quinn what he liked and what he didn't like about his first offseason so far working with the Commanders.
Things that I definitely liked going through the spring. We took time before we got to football with the, not just the free agents that came or the veterans that were here, to get to know the man before the ball player. And I think that was an important process. So much as a coach, you just want to get right into the football and finding out somebody's why, more of their background, what do they stand for, why were some of the things important. I would say that's a good lesson, in building something. From a leadership standpoint, early on, I think in my life, I thought how is it me leading others? And what I found out through processes is real leading takes place when you can identify and develop the leaders within themselves. And so I'm pleased with what we're seeing in that spot. I'm hopeful at the end of camp you ask me, hey, Dan, who are the leaders? And your hand cramps because I'm listing so many players. Things that I wish I could do differently as you're going to go, probably those are more like practice oriented. Could I have added more or less into it? I think one of the real fun things for everybody to watch is the addition of some special teams plays this year. And I know it's been a story of the offseason, but I was pleased with the amount of work that we put in, but time will tell if it was enough work, Candy.
Yeah, one of the things that they're working on is the kickoffs. That's going to be new this year. And I guess we'll get our first look at it on the 10th. The Hall of Fame game must be before that, so that's probably next week. But when the Commanders first play, it'll be a noon kickoff against the Jets. And we will see how this kickoff works. If you haven't been following this in the offseason, there's been a rule change. And what you have is 2 return people, okay? And then you have the other 9 players up on the line of scrimmage. The offensive or the kicking team, they have their players on the line of scrimmage 5 yards apart. And then the kicker kicks off from, I believe, the 40-yard line. And it's meant to encourage kickoffs, but create a better safety situation. We'll see how it works out. But that's going to be something to watch and with great interest. And also, Quinn mentioned today before practice that he's going to work on a lot of red zone stuff. Football story to throw in here before we get to the NBA. Jerry Jones has settled things with a woman who filed a paternity suit against him. Her name is Alexandra Davis. She has been going by Alexandra Jones, and she reached a settlement in Texas court. Excuse me, on this, and it comes from a 2022 lawsuit that she said she was conceived by Jones in the mid-1990s, a relationship with her mother, Cynthia Davis, who I believe was an employee of an airline, if I'm not mistaken. Jones had been suing over a breach of contract of the settlement that he reached with the mom in 1998 regarding the paternity. And so they were suing back and forth, and it appears that they came to a deal. And Jones had indicated he paid more than $3 million through trust of her early childhood. Now, remember this, 1998, whenever this settlement was reached at that time, Jones had owned the Cowboys for 9 years, and they were worth a hell of a lot more money than he'd paid for them. He paid $189 million for them. But they weren't worth the $10 billion that they are now. So I think, she was looking for a little bit of a kicker there, and I don't blame her. And Jones was saying, we had a deal, and she's trying to break that, whatever. So anyway, he moves on. He moves on to training camp, and he's been married since 1963 to Eugenia Jones. And part of the court back and forth was they wanted him to take a paternity test, which I guess he knew he wasn't going to pass. So here we are. Jerry Jones moves on. It's all settled, and we won't hear any more about a paternity suit with a woman that he fathered back in, I guess she's 27 years old, so do the math on that. All right, let's get to the NBA. Isaac Kuhn Harris is here, and while I was off last week and just before that, you were at the Summer League. Right, in Vegas?
Yeah, I did.
All right.
I enjoyed it.
Thoughts and observations. What'd you like? What did you see that surprised you?
What surprised me was obviously with the Wizards, just with Alex Sarr.
No offense, right?
No offense.
Yeah.
No offense. Just straight defense, which is fine. And I never really viewed him as the main cornerstone of the draft. It was Bub Carrington from the start.
Right.
I felt like, and he really proved me right.
Yeah.
So that was one of the big observations I noticed.
Okay, well, that's probably the Sarr is the more long-term, and you got a guard who's played a full year of college basketball, so there's that. Also, how about the whole setup? Talk about how that works in Vegas for the Summer League.
The whole setup is, I guess, the best way to describe it for a non-basketball fan is it is literally basketball's Coachella. Mm-hmm. You can go from gym to gym, from Thomas Mack to the Cox Pavilion, and see all the games, and then everyone's just kind of walking around with you, as far as former coaches, players, scouts, everything. So the best description is just that it's basketball's Coachella. Everybody in basketball is there for 11 days.
It's just 2 courts that they use?
Yes, it's just 2 courts.
And their games going on basically continuously from like noon to midnight or something?
From noon to like 10 p.m., yeah.
Yeah, and of the guys who are playing, I'm guessing only 3 or 4 from each team are probably going to be playing in the league. It's a lot of guys just getting looks, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of guys getting looks, a lot of guys that are going to get possibly some G League looks.
Yeah.
Some guys that I noticed that they were playing in the G League for a different team, such as, like, let's say for the Wizards, they played for the Capital City Go-Go, but they still own their rights, so they end up getting loaned to another team playing just to see as a tryout because, the host team for their Summer League has their draft picks they want to try out. I know for the Wizards, the Capital City Go-Go players, they showed out, and some of them were on loan, but a lot of them were mixed in to help Alex Sarr and Bub Carrington and Keyshawn George kind of adjust to the NBA rules, and it showed. I mean, record finished 500.
Yeah.
So.
I don't know exactly how the Sarr contract works. Is it conceivable with his lack of offense that he could spend some time with the Go-Go this year, just kind of, tuning up a little bit?
It wouldn't surprise me, but I don't know. His defensive presence showed that he's ready to play defense in the league. It's just offensively, I wouldn't be surprised for the first half of the year, put him maybe for 2 games.
Yeah.
Just to see.
Because he shot 15%, I saw. I mean, it was terrible offensively.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's fine. I mean, in college, you can probably get away with that. But I think in the pros, you got to have some offense, unless your name is Dennis Rodman. I mean, I don't know how and I don't think he's that. He's not that type of rebounder yet, maybe,
No, he isn't. And, I mean, if he spends any time in the G League with the Go-Go, Coach Cody Toppert has the great development scheme, and big thing that he preached was foundation. So it'll give him the good foundation offensively to work on those skills, but I don't think he's going to spend too much time down there.
All right, let's move on to what we've seen in the Olympics. And by the way, I know you've been watching that as well. Teams talk about this all the time, being able to turn it back on. Last 2 games, I know Germany's a pretty decent team, but South Sudan, where we really came close to losing. I mean, I hope that they can turn it back on, and I think we'll probably see a different result when they play. I guess it's an 11-15 game against Serbia on Sunday. But I don't know. The world's a lot better right now in basketball than it used to be.
Yeah, the game has evolved. South Sudan being led by Royal Ivy, NBA vet. Luol Deng's the general manager, longtime NBA vet. Several guys that have played in the league and also playing high-level college basketball. It is not the 90s anymore where you're beating up on Angola.
So anyway, yesterday Brian Windhorst was on PTI, and he's covering all this during the Olympics. And his message to Tony and Mike seemed to be, yeah, it looks bad now, but let's not get carried away.
I think that they believe that they can play better. They have some things that they can tune up. They're still working on their rotations. They're still working on their offense. When they get into a half-court offense, it gets a little squishy. But I do believe that they think that they're playing well and they're trending in the right direction. And you're going to say, well, how could you say that when you beat South Sudan by 1 point and Germany by 4? Well, the South Sudan game was not a good performance. It was really a bad first half. They were much better in the second half. They were the dominant team in the second half of that game. And against Germany, Germany is an excellent team. They are the current World Cup champions. Those guys have played together for years. They play smart. They play fast. They get into passing lanes. They have great size. They really gave the U.S. some trouble with the way that they attack the offensive glass. Considering this team doesn't have much chemistry, I think they're doing okay. And I know that that's not what the standard is, but I will tell you, back in 2021, when I was getting ready to leave for Tokyo, I felt really nervous about whether that team was going to win the gold medal. That team lost 2 run-up games and looked shaky in the others. This team was undefeated. Their margin for error is definitely bigger.
All right, Brian, you know I'm working with a skeptic here for the last 100 years who doesn't want to believe that what used to be a huge gap has now been cut to almost nothing by an international basketball scene, which has really improved globally. Will you please enlighten your friend, Mr. Kornheiser?
Yeah, so this is going to be the most competitive international basketball event ever staged, especially the teams that reach the knockout round. Those 8 teams are going to be excellent teams. All these teams have size. They all have a continuity advantage on the Americans. This team's really only been together for 3 weeks. And I know that that sounds like an excuse, but when you actually watch these games and watch these teams run their offense like they could in the dark, and then you see Team USA get the ball and they get stuck in the half court and it's one-on-one basketball, you really feel the difference. Absolutely, the Americans are the favorite. Absolutely, they should be expected to win their 5th consecutive gold medal. But absolutely, these are going to be close games. They're going to have to work and they're going to have to come down right to the end if they're going to win, what they really need, which is 3 wins in the knockout round, but 6 games overall.
All right, Brian. Tony and I will continue nonetheless to fight over this on the phone after we get off the show. But let's move to 40-year-old secret weapon LeBron James, who has rescued the team in consecutive games. Brian, I think we know how LeBron feels because we see all that flexing. We see all of that all the time now. But, you talk to him, you know him, you have a sense of him. What's he thinking and feeling like?
This is like in the in-season tournament last year. LeBron has decided he wants this championship, and he's going to do everything he can to get it. He is playing at full power right now. He wants the ball in these situations. He was really annoyed when Steve Kerr didn't start him in the second half against South Sudan when the team was down 14 points after a really shaky first half. He was absolutely aggressive from the opening tip-off. I mean, we had a record crowd here in London last night, and LeBron had 2 dunks in the first 3 minutes of the game and then scored Team USA's last 11 points like he was on the 2007 Cavs all over again. He is absolutely pouring it out. He is going to, work at both ends of the court. I know that he's got, at this point in his career, he has to moderate his energy. You can bring up tape of games in January and February where he is not playing full power. He is at full power. And I think one of the interesting things about this team, and maybe it speaks to where Team USA is going to be in 2028, when the trouble has happened these last couple of games, it's been LeBron that they've gone to. Steve Kerr has drawn up plays for LeBron, gone to LeBron. And I think that is something that we could see if Team USA gets in trouble when the Olympics start this weekend.
I will stay with LeBron and get you out of here on this. Joel Embiid told the New York Times that LeBron is not the same player he was a couple of years ago. I don't want to make this into Colin Montgomery and Tiger Woods, but I am interested in finding out that Joel Embiid has won nothing and LeBron has 4 rings. How did LeBron take that?
Well, we didn't ask him about it yet because we haven't had a chance to really delve into it. By the way, Joel Embiid has played really well the last couple of games, rounding into form, and that's been big for the Americans. Joel, on his face, is correct. LeBron James is not the LeBron James of that run where he went to 8 straight finals. Steph Curry is not the Steph Curry when he was the unanimous MVP 10 years ago. That's just true. They are not players that can dominate, especially at the MVP level like that. But what I know about LeBron historically is he doesn't want his teammates talking like that. So my guess is that it mildly annoyed him, and he might have given him a little bit of a joke after he had that dominant performance last night, because that's how LeBron tends to operate.
Yeah, could have been like a Kirk Cousins. You like that, you know. And also, I don't think Embiid did it for this reason, but the great ones, when you poke at him a little bit, Michael Jordan used to thrive on this, a doubter. So, could it be, I don't think so, but could it be that Steve Kerr went to Joel Embiid and said, hey, when you're talking to reporters, just, kind of mention that LeBron may have lost a step because I want to keep him motivated. I don't think he needs to do that, but it's interesting the way these things sometimes play out. And if that has motivated LeBron, good, because he's been tremendous in the last 2 games. They would have lost, certainly, to South Sudan if he didn't do what he did at the end. And then in the Germany game, he scored the last 11 points. And I don't know how much longer they can sustain just LeBron heroics to win games, but that's how they've done it for the last 2. We'll see what happens when they play Serbia on Sunday. One other Olympic story, which I kept from over the weekend and I meant to get to, and this is fascinating to me. We know the story of Jesse Owens, how he showed up Hitler in the 1936 Olympics when Hitler was trying to create his Aryan race. And here's an African-American who is spectacular, wins 4 gold medals in those Olympics. There's more history to this, and it's a story written by Ronald Schaefer, who is a former Washington political features writer at the Wall Street Journal, and I guess did some really interesting research on this. It talked about, at the time, Hitler was known for not shaking hands with Owens after he won. And the headline in a lot of U.S. papers was Hitler snubs Owens. Well, Owens later said, Hitler didn't snub me. It was our president who snubbed me. The president didn't even send me a telegram. A telegram was kind of like a text or an email back in the day, and that was Franklin Roosevelt. And he said this while he was campaigning against Roosevelt and campaigning for Alf Landon, a Republican. And Owens had been paid $10,000 to do that, which was a hell of a lot of money back in the 1940s at that time. And the story goes on to talk about, you've heard a lot of stories about how Jesse Owens struggled after the Olympics, that he was, doing things like racing horses in stunts and so forth just to make some money. That eventually happened, but it appears that he actually did well for quite a while. He says, contrary to frequent stories that he lived in poverty right after the Olympics, he initially did fantastically well with promotions. But as the months passed, he said, nobody offered me a job. When I came back to my native country, all the stories about Hitler, I couldn't ride in front of the bus. I couldn't live where I wanted, which was, a sad commentary on how things used to be at that time in the United States. But when he got back, there was a ticker tape parade. And he went to the apartment of vaudevillian Bill Bojangles Robinson, who introduced him to an agent. The 2 men, for a cut, arranged for an Olympic hero to appear at exhibitions and events with a traveling band for thousands of dollars. Thousands of dollars in the 1930s in the Depression was a lot of money. And he had a house built for him. I mean, things were pretty good for a while. Those are things that you hadn't heard about, but eventually that kind of dried up. He did not manage his money well. He bought his parents a big house when he got back. He bought a big car. And he opened the Jesse Owens Dry Cleaning Company with a big sign offering speedy 7-hour service by the world's fastest runner. But by 1940, the runner's fame and riches had faded. The world was changed for the American-born speedster who had started to pick cotton at 6 to help out at home. The world's fastest human has endured the bitterness of bankruptcy in 4 short years and is now engaged in quietly building his life for his family in comparative obscurity, the story said, and that's when he began to race horses and so forth. He died at the age of 66 of lung cancer, died quite young, but he did, before his death, receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom from Jimmy Carter in 1976. And he is, I think, regarded as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, track and field athlete that we've ever had. Maybe Carl Lewis, you could make an argument for that. But given the social significance of what he did in the 1936 Olympics, I think you'd have to look at it in kind of a different way. But, yeah, interesting details on things that I had not been aware of with Jesse Owens. And there have been a number of movies and books written about him. And it's a really interesting period of time to look back on as we approach. Geez, we're coming up not that far away from nearly 100 years ago when that happened. Coming up, we got Orioles preview. We'll be joined by Albert Suarez, who started last night for the Birds. Also some comments from Cedric Mullins and Brandon Hyde as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.